I thought it was just a yacht fling, but the billionaire saw the person I'd been hiding. The first thing I noticed about the man was not his money, it was the way he looked at me, like he could see the bruises I kept buried under jokes and tailored clothes. The second thing I noticed. He was far too dangerous for someone like me. I didn't board the Oceania Grace looking for anything more than a weekend escape. I was tired of pretending, of smiling just right, of dressing how the world expected a successful tech consultant to dress. I wanted to vanish into champagne sunsets and be nobody. But billionaires ruin everything. His name was Carter Langford. If you Googled him, you'd get three things: hedge fund, scandal, and the word ruthless stamped across every article like it was part of his brand. But the man I met wasn't some Wall Street reaper. He was quieter. Warmer. And yet, terrifying in his focus. It started with a dance. Well, no, called it a dance. I called it surviving a badly planned charity mixer on the upper deck, one overpriced whiskey away from jumping overboard. Carter was just there, black suit, glass of something amber, eyes sharp as a scalpel. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he said. "And yet, here we are. Both suffering for the tax write-off." He laughed, and for a second, the air cracked open. Real. Honest. Uncontrolled. I should have walked away. People like him saw too much. And I'd spent years becoming someone who couldn't be seen. My real name is Alex Tran. But on the guest list, I was Alexa Trenton. It was easier, smoother. People took instructions better when they thought I was a polished cis woman who made six figures and didn't flinch when someone called them darling. In truth, I was non-binary, Vietnamese American, and exhausted of pretending. The next time I saw Carter, I was barefoot on the back deck at midnight, watching the stars instead of mingling with whatever plastic crowd still buzzed near the bar. He approached without a sound, but I felt him. "Trying to escape again?" he asked. "Trying to breathe." That was the beginning. We talked for hours. About nothing. About everything. He didn't ask me about work or who I knew. He asked what music made me cry. What I feared at night. What dreams I'd buried under practicality. No one ever asked me those things. They asked about projects. Deliverables. If I'd ever considered feminizing my voice more for client comfort. Carter never once asked me what I was. But that didn't mean he didn't know. The third night, he found me crying in the ship's gym, of all places, after a drunk investor called me a slur when I corrected him for misgendering me. I didn't yell back. Didn't throw a punch. Just took it and walked away, like I always did. Because that's what the world teaches people like me. "Don't apologize for crying," Carter said. He handed me a towel, his voice low, steady. "People who feel deeply are the only ones I trust." I didn't mean to kiss him. But I did. And he kissed me back like I wasn't a mistake. There's a moment in every story when the past claws its way into the room, demanding attention. For me, that moment came on the 5th day of the cruise, when the guest list was leaked by some bored intern at a media outlet. Suddenly, my photo Alexa Trenton was on gossip blogs. But someone from my old life saw it. My estranged father. A man who hadn't spoken to me in 8 years. Not since I told him I wasn't his daughter. That I wasn't a she, wasn't the perfect, soft-spoken girl he wanted to parade through church. He left a voicemail I'll never forget. "You're a liar, Alex. You always were." Carter found me curled up in a linen closet, breathing too fast to control. "Alex," he said quietly, crouching down. He didn't use the name on the guest list. Just mine. My real one. "What's going on?" I wanted to lie. To say it was a headache, that I was drunk, that I was cold. But I didn't. Instead, I told him the truth. Every last, ugly, sacred truth. About my gender. My name. My family. The trauma I carried like a second skin. I told him about the voice training I abandoned, the therapist I fired, the version of me I kept inside because the world made it unsafe to breathe otherwise. And when I finished, I couldn't look at him. Then he reached forward, gently took my chin, and made me meet his eyes. "You're the bravest person I've ever met," he said. That was the moment I fell in love with him. And that was the moment I knew I'd lose him. Because fairy tales weren't for people like me. The next morning, the ship docked briefly in Santa Barbara for a scheduled excursion. Most guests left in sun hats and linen shorts, chattering about wine tastings and beachside photo ops. I stayed behind. I needed space. Not from Carter but from the intensity of being seen. He respected that. Didn't push. Just left a note tucked under my coffee cup in the ship's lounge. "I see you, Alex. Still here if you want me to be." 7 words, and somehow they broke me more than my father's voicemail had. I spent the afternoon walking the nearly deserted decks, headphones in but no music playing, staring at my reflection in the polished railings. Was I really falling for this man? This billionaire who could buy the moon but listened to me like I was the most important thing he'd ever heard. What would he do once we got off this ship? What would I do? I didn't want to go back to my job. My carefully gender-neutral wardrobe. The voice I pitched higher in boardrooms so men wouldn't look at me with suspicion. I didn't want to go back to hiding. But the alternative? The real me? That person didn't exist in Silicon Valley spreadsheets or in the smug, curated confidence of yacht parties. That person existed only in the dark. Until now. That night, I found Carter on the front deck, standing alone against the wind. His hair was slightly messy, his collar unbuttoned. There was something achingly human about him in that moment, and I hated how much I loved it. "I was afraid you'd disappear," he said, not turning. I almost did. He turned to face me then, and the softness in his eyes wrecked me. "But you didn't." "No," I whispered. "I didn't." I stepped closer. The ocean thundered quietly beneath us, a hush-like breath between words. He reached for my hand, and I let him. "Alex," he said, so gently it made my throat tighten, "you don't have to prove anything to me. Or to the world. You exist, and that's enough." My chest heaved. I hadn't cried this much since I was a teenager. But the tears didn't come from shame this time. They came from the overwhelming grief of being accepted. Of being loved. I kissed him again. This time, fully, fiercely, as me. The final night of the cruise was a masquerade gala. Carter's idea, apparently. "A poetic end," he said. "Let the world wear masks while we finally took ours off." I wore a fitted black suit, tailored to the lines of my body. No corsets. No makeup. No heels. My hair slicked back, my face bare, my name badge reading simply, Alex. Carter wore navy velvet, a sleek half-mask, and a calm, proud smile that made my knees weak. When he introduced me to a group of investors, he didn't hesitate. "This is Alex Tran," he said. "A brilliant mind. And the person I'm lucky to call mine." The silence that followed was immediate. Some eyes narrowed. One man, red-cheeked and obviously wealthy, muttered something under his breath and walked away. Carter didn't flinch. He just tightened his hand around mine. That moment made headlines the next morning. I got the first phone call before we even docked in San Diego. My boss. Then a client. Then HR. I was being accused of misrepresentation. Not for my gender. But for not disclosing a personal relationship with a potential investor. Carter, of course. They wanted me to step down from my position. Quietly. No fuss. For appearances. I told them to shove it. Carter offered to intervene. I can buy the company outright, he said, half joking. Fire the board. Install you as CEO. I smiled bitterly. That's not the point. And it wasn't. I didn't want to be saved. I wanted the world to stop punishing me for existing outside its narrow margins. I need to do this my way, I told him. He nodded. Then I'll be here. However long it takes. The days that followed were a blur of headlines, tweets, think pieces. Some praised my defiance. Others mocked me. Someone dug up old photos from high school, plastered my birth name across a blog post titled The Deception of Alex Tran. I stayed off the internet. Instead, I wrote. For the first time in years, I opened a blank document not for a client or an employer but for myself. I wrote about identity. About erasure. About the quiet war that queer and trans people fight every day just to exist in a world built to deny them. The piece went viral. Then The Atlantic reached out. Then Forbes. Within a month, I had speaking invitations. Interviews. Emails from trans teens telling me I made them feel seen. Safe. Carter never once tried to take credit. He came to every talk, sat quietly in the back, smiled when I caught his eye. Once, after a particularly emotional Q&A, I found him waiting backstage with 2 iced coffees and a quiet hug. "You're changing the world," he whispered. I shook my head. "No. Just telling the truth." He kissed my forehead. "That's the same thing." Then came the night I knew we were real. We were at a quiet beach house in Malibu, far from paparazzi and pressure. I was making dumplings. Carter was terrible at folding them, so he just watched, leaning on the counter with a grin. "Marry me," he said, out of nowhere. I dropped a spoon. He didn't laugh. "I'm serious," he said. "Not because I want a photo op or some grand wedding. But because I want you. However you change. However you stay the same. I want all of it." My hands were trembling. "I've never even said yes to myself," I whispered. "How can I say yes to you?" He reached for me then gently, like I was breakable and sacred all at once. "Because you're finally being you," he said. "And that's who I fell in love with." I said yes. Not because I needed saving. But because I finally believed I deserved to be loved exactly as I was. We didn't have a wedding with gold chairs or a New York Times announcement. We got married barefoot on a quiet cliffside in Big Sur, under the soft hum of ocean wind and a sky too big for shame. I wore what I wanted: dark slacks, a soft gray shirt, and the jade pendant my mother gave me before she disappeared from my life for good. Carter wore a white shirt, sleeves rolled, his heart completely bare. There were only 6 people there. No press. No staged vows. No pretending. "I choose you," he said. "Not in spite of who you are, but because of it. You've taught me how to be honest, how to see. I didn't know what love was until I watched you fight for the right to live in your own skin. And I said this. I spent most of my life feeling like a lie. Like my existence came with an apology stitched into every breath. But you saw through the performance. You made me feel real. And because of you, I know now that I am worthy of love. Not in pieces. Not in rolls. But whole." We kissed as the waves crashed below. And it should have been perfect. It was perfect. Until 3 months later, when the headlines returned. Langford Industries investigated for fraud. Security Commission launches probe into Billionaire's offshore assets. Is the queer activist married to a criminal? I woke to dozens of missed calls. My face on tabloid covers. News anchors speculating about Carter's influence over me. Headlines suggesting I was either complicit or naive. That my activism had been bought. That I was just a well-paid puppet in a much larger scandal. But the worst part wasn't the noise. It was that Carter hadn't told me. Not a word. Not a hint. No warning that something was coming. He'd been meeting with lawyers in secret. Hiding balance sheets. Trying to protect me but also lying. When I confronted him, he stood in our kitchen, jaw clenched. "I didn't want to drag you into this," he said. "I thought I could fix it before it exploded." "But you did drag me into this," I said, voice trembling. "You married me and made me part of your name. And now people think I'm a fraud too." He looked shattered. "I never meant for that to happen. But it did. I left that night. Took only a backpack and the truth. The months that followed were the loneliest I'd known. I stepped down from interviews. Turned down speaking gigs. I deleted Twitter. I rented a small apartment in Oakland and worked part-time with a non-profit for trans youth. I made rice every night. I wore the same hoodie 4 days a week. And slowly, I started to feel human again. Then, one morning in December, I got a letter. Handwritten. From Carter. "Alex. I won't ask you to forgive me. I only want you to know the truth. I didn't lie because I didn't trust you. I lied because I didn't trust myself. I thought if I told you what was coming, I'd see that look in your eyes again, the one that says you're already halfway to the door. I couldn't bear it. But the truth is this, I loved you before I even knew your name. I love you now. And even if you never come back, I will spend the rest of my life being the man you made me believe I could be. Yours. Carter." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea. It was just honest. And that's what made it hurt most. The investigation concluded 4 months later. Carter wasn't guilty of fraud, but several of his employees were. He paid fines. Stepped down from his company. Publicly denounced the culture of greed that had let it happen under his watch. Then he disappeared from headlines. Just a ghost in a black coat. But not from my life. He didn't try to reach out again. Didn't send more letters. No gifts. No calls. Just silence. I needed to know why. So I went back. The Langford estate in Napa was quiet. Smaller than I remembered. A vineyard covered in winter fog. The house dim, no staff, no pretense. I knocked once. The door opened slowly. He looked older. Not in age but in something deeper. A man who had lost what mattered. He blinked like he wasn't sure I was real. "Hi," I said. He just nodded. "Hi." We didn't touch. Didn't kiss. Just stood in the silence until it wrapped around us like a blanket. "I don't hate you," I finally said. He exhaled. "I just needed to become someone who didn't disappear when things got hard." He nodded. "You have." Then I said the thing I didn't plan to say. The thing I didn't even know I felt until that second. "I still love you." His breath caught. "You do?" "Yes. But I'm not coming back to be rescued. I'm coming back because I chose you. Even now." He crossed the space between us slowly. Carefully. "Then let's start again," he said. "No masks. No money. No lies. We didn't kiss. We just stood there. Foreheads touching. Breathing. Existing. Together." 1 year later, we opened a retreat in Northern California. A place for LGBTQ+ youth to rest. To heal. To be seen. We called it the Grace House, after the ship where it all began. I still write. Carter still works, but quietly, behind the scenes. We live in a house with big windows, too many books, and a shared closet that holds both suits and saris, boots and binders. Some people still whisper that we're strange. That our love doesn't fit into neat boxes. They're right. It doesn't. It never did. And thank God for that. The end. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.